It's not at all, not at all. We're in, we're rocking and rolling. So it's good to meet you. I kind of feel like we've already met. It's weird. There's like, I'm sure we've got a lot of friends in common. I know, well, I think John Connolly is one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of weird. So hey, hi, Glenn, person I feel like I've
Hey,
met before.
how's it going? Nice to see you or see you again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it's one of those weird things with with music, and then there, like this time delay of a couple decades. It's like
Yeah.
there's so many people like we I'm sure we both like either played alongside with or drank a couple of beers with along the way, you know?
Well, if you there you go. Look, I mean that's two tours we did with Nuclear Assault.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and there's I mean that is a great starting point as well. Um, but look before I get into that and the particular story that I want to tell you,
Okay.
before I get into that, we the reason why we're here right now is because you posted a an old combat flyer of of like bands who are putting stuff out, and on there were three UK bands. There was
Uh-huh.
us, there was Tiger Tails, and there was Virus. Strangely, Tiger Tails, the glam band, were probably our best friends in music because we were like we were like we didn't give a shit. We were kind of like that's where our kind of punk elements sort of bled into our music was is that
Right.
we didn't give a shit. Um, and that and Tiger Tails were exactly the same, except they put loads of makeup on. So
Right,
they
right.
looked like they gave a shit, but they didn't. So we hit it off really well. And we always found, I mean, we very much had a sense of humor much as you guys did. So, but because we were a metal band, um, we invariably found that other metal bands that we met just just took themselves too seriously and didn't,
Right, right,
you know what I mean? We didn't have that kind of rapport. Although I have to
right.
say, all the bands behind me, like Candlemass, Dark Angel, Nuclear Assault. I mean, when you spend like 2 months on the road together, yeah, you find that bond.
Right, right,
Um, but also there was a number of other bands on there. There was you guys, there was Crumb Suckers,
right.
who I've never met and I'd love to get on. Um, there was just and so anyway, if you hadn't posted that and tagged Acid Rain in,
That was so funny.
we wouldn't be having this conversation now. And I reposted that picture on our through our social media yesterday, and Tiger Tails got in touch. Virus said hello. I was just tagging everybody,
That's
um,
awesome.
including Sword as well. From Cam, he's like, I'd forgotten they even existed. So
That's
so
fantastic.
yeah, it's really cool. One picture, one picture, and the amount of people who said that what an amazing kind of sort of historical artifact that is. That like people posting that this is fascinating, and I had a discussion with somebody as well who said I never realized that combat had such a diverse um group of signings. They always thought
Right,
that it's like, oh, combat, it's just the heavy shit,
right,
and
right.
the fast. And so they dug a little deeper and found all these other bands that were signed to combat back in the day. So yeah, dude, thank you. That picture, that one picture.
Yeah, it's fan. I mean, there's a there's a couple people that forward me stuff, and because like maybe I don't know, maybe about a year ago or a year and a half ago, I had some free time. So I realized like there was a bunch of people posting about Ludichrist stuff and Scatterbrain stuff. And I was like, oh, I have so much stuff in my closet. I should just like put some stuff out there. And I started kind of posting, and all of a sudden I was like all these people were like getting in touch. It was like almost exactly the same. And some of them were people who had worked at combat, and some of them were people like in other bands, and all these different people just started started showing up. And I was even people that like I never really was in conversation with. They were like, "Oh yeah, I was
What
like
you
the
mean, like me?
assistant." was like, I was the assistant intern, like when that album came out, and I have
Right.
this thing, you know. And
Yeah.
so one of the guys is really great. Like, was like, I have a whole bunch of these. I don't know if he was in charge of like typing them or he just kept them. I have a bunch of these kind of releases, you know, these kind of like updates, press updates from, and he sent me that one. I was like, oh, this is fantastic, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, also I tagged Accused it. I've ended up finding Blaine from the Accused on Instagram. So I've messaged him to try and get him on because I'm like long time fan of the Accused.
Yeah,
Uh,
Accused, what an amazing band.
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Amazing band.
the whole Martha Splatterhead thing when I was a kid. Well, on the back of one of our singles, I'm proudly wearing a Martha Splatterhead t-shirt from way back in the day. It's just yeah. So it's incredible. So look, the story. This is the story. Okay. Firstly, firstly, John Connolly and I bonded really as two front men, as it were. We just seem to gravitate towards each other pretty much immediately at the start of the tour, and he was like the older brother I never had, and it's really cool. I mean, he was a real kind of as much of a fan of the music as I was,
Yeah, yeah.
but also like he'd give me advice. I'd ask him questions. Like stranded in hell, ring Satan's bell. Really, John? Really? And he was like, yeah, Dan's not going to be writing any more lyrics on the release. And
Move past that moment, but
yeah,
okay, right? It's
yeah,
like that's
yeah.
part of like what we did.
Yeah, I got to ask him about the shitty guitar sound on Game Over and stuff like that, stuff that had fascinated me, And he was like, have you heard this singer in Violence? I was like, yeah, it's cool, isn't it? He goes, yeah, I've got no idea what he's doing, but it's different, and all these different discussions. And then there was one night where the label came um, to the tour, and I can't remember, it's probably a London show.
Right.
And he said to me, oh, I've got to sit down with Jem Howard from Music for Nations. He says, I got to sit down with Jem. I got to have a conversation with him about my buddies Ludichrist. It's like they're not releasing it over here. Now, being a student of the game, I already had your shit on import.
Uh,
So, I was like, well, look, I'm right there with you. I'll back you up on this. Um, and Jem came down, and there was me, John, and Jem sat
so
there
funny.
discussing your band, saying,
Put this out.
John's righteous indignation. What's wrong with you guys? And
Exactly.
and Jem just said, look, Martin Hooker, Martin is not feeling it. He's just not feeling it. Now, it was weird because
So
at the
interesting.
time it felt like there was a reciprocal deal between Music for Nations and
Right.
Combat and its various subsidiaries, and Music for Nations and its various subsidiaries, Rough Justice, Under One Flag, etc. And it felt like there was this reciprocal, like, we send you stuff, you release it over there, you send us
Right.
stuff, we release it over here. And was it Steve Sinclair at Combat at that time?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Steve was like the owner or
yeah.
something like or like I
Chief
don't know,
arsehole.
chief chief operating asshole
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
yeah.
relative. Steve was kind of like relativity level, and then I'm gonna draw a blank, like the early days was like Joe Leonard and I can't even remember who the kind of roster of people was on, like
Yeah,
if it's like that immaculate deception moment, like who was there.
yeah. Well, funnily, I think we've just created, by the way, a new corporate role, which is CAO, or COA, Chief Operating
COA, I
Asshole.
think. Yeah, I think it's a good band name too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, So well, that's our side project sorted, Glenn. That's
Yeah,
good move.
exactly. We have to draft John for that too. Like you can get him in there
Yeah.
on rhythm
Well,
guitar or bass
well,
or something.
definitely. Well, look, I think so. Basically, Martin Hooker wasn't the owner. That was somebody way in the background, and like Steve Sinclair wasn't the owner, but he was kind of the chief. But the
Right,
owner
right,
was somewhere in the background. Now, Steve, um, I think Ludichrist was fairly sort of close to his heart. It
right.
seemed from our side of things. Now, whether this is just how I remember it, but anyway, Steve, this started a bit of a feud between Steve and Martin because Martin, basically, you were the first band
That he
that
said no to.
that he said no to.
It's so great.
And now, what happens when two powerful people in two labels start having a feud? Who loses out, Glenn?
Yeah, all the bands, maybe.
Guess
All the
what?
fans.
Guess what? Tit for tat. We never ever got another release of one of our records in the States again.
So funny.
Yeah. So Steve was like, "Oh, you're not going to release Ludicrous? Fine. I'm not releasing Acid Rain." So
How did he pick it? How did he pick you to be the
because we were Martin's pet project,
okay.
we were he signed one UK thrash band at that time, and it was us, and he felt that we were perfectly placed to do the best job. And so Steve went, "Well, not over here." So our first album did get released, but until 2019, it was
Oh
the
my God.
only release we ever got in the States. Our next album didn't get released.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I
That
know.
is absolutely crazy.
So basically, yeah, that's our kind of link. It's like it's yeah, Martin and Steve didn't get on, so you didn't get released in the UK and Europe, and we didn't get released in the States.
Yeah, we're like
Great.
the abused stepchildren of the
Yeah.
troubled marriage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
So how many releases? So I was tracking you guys, and then at some point, I like everything else, I lost track. Like how many releases were there, and then did you guys take a pause or
Oh, yeah.
plow through the whole time, or what was
God,
the?
no. No, definitely not. We did Moshkinstein that came out on Combat, and that which was a mini album, and then we put out a full album called The Fear. We put out a 10-inch single called Humanoia. We put out a full album called Obnoxious, and that came out in early '90. And basically, by the time our management went to the States to shop that, they'd shopped the demos in December. Yeah, they shot the demos in November of '89.
Okay.
And by which time I think Steve was at Mechanic MCA. And he was now saying to our management, yeah, this sounds great. Here's a deal to come and sign for MCA. And now our management said that like three labels said we'd like to sign them and release this album when it's recorded. And he said, look, what I'm going to do is play it clever. They like the demos. Let them fight over you for a bit. I'll go back with the finished album, and that'll blow them
Right.
away even
Clinch the
more.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. By the time, so that was November '89. By the time he went back for meetings in February, he couldn't get one with anyone because
The whole world
bing,
started falling apart.
four
Yeah.
mo- 4 months, four
Right.
months from labels fighting over us to no, you can't have a meeting. You can't even get in a building. You know, and yeah, then like you say, everything changed.
Yeah,
So
it's really that moment. There's really this moment, like for some labels, it was like as early as late 1990. For some, it was like 91, like sort of late 90, 91 into like the beginning of 92, everything started kind of like completely come apart.
yeah,
Like with all those labels, like whether it was like the popularization of grunge and everybody moved, or it was like the beginning of the consolidation of stuff in the United States, like that transfer that like eventually became clear that the labels just weren't doing artist development in any way. They were just, they had enough assets and they were moving to like being licensing companies for commercials and stuff with their heavy hitter catalogs, and all the other stuff was like, hey, this stuff's like too small peanuts. Like even the small labels didn't want to deal with anything that wasn't either exactly the right thing, the right style at the moment. It's so funny how like metal and like hardcore stuff, like it was, it just was never popular with, you know, I mean, like was popular underground in the US, but like the releases were never popular. And then there
Yeah.
was like this 4 or 5 years where stuff got released. And then when that fell, like sort of the whole thing started to collapse.
Yeah.
Like so
Yeah.
bizarre.
Well, it's funny you say that about labels stopping artist development. I mean, personally, I think certainly as regards thrash metal, which is, you know, the genre I was particularly in, so it's the only one I can really speak of with any kind of authority. Um, Personally, my feeling is that the artists stopped artist development as well.
Right,
I
right,
mean,
right. That's right.
you know, thrash metal, it's like, right, have you got a song about Mother Earth dying? Yeah. Is it a ballad? Is it two verses acoustic with a heavy chorus? Good. Yeah. Tick. Yeah. 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 The genre had become box ticking. You know, people say that grunge killed thrash. Thrash turned the gun upon itself.
Yeah, I think
You know,
that's right. Thrash committed suicide
yeah. Yeah.
in light of all this other stuff that was like,
Well, as much as grunge, you know, this is where I don't get where people say like grunge killed thrash. It's like, really? Because like death metal was, you know, ironically, death metal was alive. Yeah. And showing, leading the way in development, you know, and all of a sudden it was kind of like, right, yeah, these guys are all like taking huge risks, and there's all of a sudden every band that comes out, it seems like there's another genre springing up
right, right,
around it.
right. Yeah, it was funny
Uh,
in the US. I mean, it's just like the audiences started falling out, you know, where it's like with Ludicrous, so we just built up an audience like playing karate studios and storage containers and, you know, like basically anything that a bunch of kids thought was a club. And then it really wasn't until like, you know, like 80, 88, around there where we started playing like real venues. And then we started build up a thing around there. But then it was like when stuff sort of started falling in like 91, 92, it was like people just weren't coming, like it's like somehow all the little weird clubs had gone away, or kids weren't like having little weird venues when their parents went on vacation. You know, they weren't
yeah.
booking touring acts in their parents' basement when the parents went on vacation anymore. Like, so those things didn't exist. And then the bigger clubs, people weren't coming out. So you could still keep developing it, but it was like weird. Like the live part of it just took this really heavy dip. And I think like for a lot of people, they just sort of it sort of killed them in some way.
Well, speaking of bands being killed, I had a conversation last week with a band called Cancer Christ, who are
Mm.
who are doing great things at the moment. It's absolutely insane. Um, and I asked them if their name was causing them a problem at all, because a band that springs to mind, Ludichrist, you know, back in the day, that
Right,
caused them a whole heap of fucking problems. Or at least that was the public story. You might tell me
right.
different.
Public story. Right.
Right, you know, that was the problem, and so you had to, like, you know, basically change the name, and that's why Scatterbrain came to into existence. Is that the case, or is that apocryphal tale?
Well, I always, I mean, that's how I kind of remember it, like how the parts that I remember from from the time was, you know, having this meeting with, uh, well, slightly more complicated, like like Ludacris' first album, like basically we had all the songs, we had been playing them for a long time, and it wasn't really until we made a record Hilly Crystal at CBGB's that he revived this idea of a CBGB's record label, right? And but he never really had a record label. I mean, he pressed a couple compilation thing. So his idea was, I think he had a half-inch tape machine or something like that was connected to the board that they used to like, hire out to bands like to record stuff, or I don't know where it came from, but so he thought, well, I have all these bands coming through, I kind of might as well like put some of this stuff out. And he was like curiously, he was a kind of real Ludichrist fan from the beginning. So he said, hey, do you guys want to put out a cassette on my cassette label? We'll just record a show. It's off the board. So I won't give you the details of that. But when we did that, then all of a sudden we had interest from Combat Records because they thought, oh, these guys we're kind of interested in them, but they just got scooped up. Are they scooped up? Are they not scooped up? And like, we didn't even have a contract with Hilly. Hilly was just like, you want to put out a record? And we're like, yeah. It was like total handshake deal. Like, we never got any money. And like, we thought maybe some people will hear us if we, if Hilly sells cassettes in like the front desk.
Well, that's it. But the thing is, it's like when you don't have anything out, if somebody is willing to bear the cost of recording everything and put tapes out, the last thing you're going to do is going to be like, yeah, and what's our cut of that? It's like, dude, if you want to expose us to as many people as possible, and also we'll actually have some cassettes, real cassettes. It'll be like we're a real band.
Yeah, exactly. We were just like, yeah, fantastic. And I'm sure Hilly never made a cent on anything he did in that. So I mean, that club never kind of was above water. So we put the first album out, and then like there was general enthusiasm. When we made the second album, we had a bunch of lineup changes. We made the second album. Crowd-wise, like audience-wise, we were super excited about it. But for some reason, like the people at Combat, we got moved over to I can't remember if the first record was Combat Core, and then the second record they moved us to like Combat, which was like more of like a general thing for them. And then like nobody was that like, I thought it was a great album. Like we had like great crowds, whatever.
Yeah.
There was like low enthusiasm. So
well, personally, can I just interject that I think it kicks the first album to death in a fight.
Yeah, totally.
It's like it's not even a competition. It's not a fair fight. It's like it wipes the floor with it. The production's improved. I do have the remastered CD with both albums on there. I don't know who re-released it, but I had the We Bite. I got the We Bite originals when they came out. Yeah, We Bite Records. Attitude ended up on We Bite as well. Andy Anderson stuff. But yeah, and I have the remastered double CD of both albums, and to this day, Power Trip sounds fucking great.
I love Power Trip. Like the band was really weird. Like the arrangements were like unusual. Like we took a lot, we just were like making stuff up. So it was like, but for some reason it didn't sell well. The record company didn't like it, and it was like, well, who cares? Like some things are going to be good, some things are going to, like it'll become popular later.
Yeah.
So we started writing the third album, and
the difficult third album,
the impossible third album, and we were like, when we recorded the second album, like we rehearsed a lot for it, but we didn't really do pre-production. I mean, we didn't work out click tracks for things, and we didn't kind of like work out every guitar harmony. We thought, we'll just do it in the studio on the fly. But the budgets were like, I'm sure you had this too. Budgets. Shouldn't say the word budget in related to like the money. I think we recorded like Power Trip for like $10,000, which also included driving to Florida and one motel room that we all stayed in, and like kind of all this, going there twice. It was poverty level. So when we did a whole bunch of pre-production for the Scatterbrain thing, and this is the moment where Howie and Steve Martin kind of had Steve Martin had come into the picture, and they were doing this In Effect, a sub label called In Effect, and Howie had moved from like doing like some promotions and working in the stock room to like he had done a couple things, and he was also kind of running the label, and they were fans, like they came out to shows, and Steve had been playing in Agnostic Front, and Howie was friends with the Anthrax guys and the Nuclear Assault guys. And they came out to rehearsals, and they were like, holy shit, this album's really good. And they're like, oh, it's so much better than Power Trip. And I was like, it's pretty much the same as Power Trip, but okay, thanks. Like super glad that you're psyched. And I think somehow like there was this dip where like nobody at the label really thought that like another Ludicrous album was going to do anything, because they didn't have any success with the previous one. So the thing I always remember from the conversation about, so anyway, I think we recorded the album. I think we were even recorded the album as a Ludicrous album. It's probably on all the 2-inch tapes and whatever. And then we started putting everything together, and they were like, we have a couple problems. One is like the radio people and the press people, and there's not that many of them. Like nobody really feels like it's going to get traction. And we're having problems with this one distributor, which was like very conservative Christian and dealt with the
Right.
South. And strangely, like, the South buys a lot of albums. I don't know why.
Right.
More free time, something. And so it was like those two things together. We were like, well, they're like, we think you should consider changing the name. We're like, well, we think we could get more, like more momentum with the idea that it's kind of a new thing. And we're like, well, it doesn't really matter that much, and we think we're going to lose like half of our kind of distribution and push like from distributors. It's so funny to even talk about distributors in 2024, right? Like that would
Yeah.
be a thing. But I mean, John from Nuclear Assault would be a good one to talk about how many times those guys went into like a store and like they hadn't gotten, like
Yeah.
the records weren't available. Nobody even knew the records were out. So we were like, okay. I mean, we just wanted to keep playing our music. So we kind of we thought about it for a while, and we came back and we said, yeah, no, that kind of works for us. Like new band name. Why not? Seems like new
That's
album name, new
brave.
band name. We thought maybe we would change the name to Power Trip, since it was like Leapfrog.
Yeah.
The record company guys ran like a name contest just to get people to like pay it to like radio people to pay attention. And then we wound up kind of going with the name Scatterbrain.
That's I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I remember. I think I vaguely remember when you said that about the competition. I think I vaguely remember that that definitely kind of, yeah, it's
That's the thing.
kicked up some dust in my brain. That has.
Right.
Um, um, and strangely, okay, it's amazing what a band name change can do,
Right.
because I love the first two albums, and I got to be honest, the third is my least favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. There's just, for me, there was just some magic missing. There was just some kind of, it's weird. It's like when I heard it, I was like, I see why they changed the name.
Right.
This doesn't sound like Ludicrous to me. It's like there's not the Ludi element doesn't seem to be like,
Right.
yeah, there. But a friend of mine, my best friend, and my best friend in life and in music, still to this day, he was not into hardcore or crossover. He wasn't a fan.
Right.
He goes big on Scatterbrain. He doesn't like the two Ludicrous albums. I'm like,
But
yeah, okay. So,
yeah, so maybe there was like some wisdom in the kind of name change, that it kind of, maybe it would have been even weirder to like have that be a kind of Ludicrous album, that people would be like, that no one would like Ludicrous. They'd be like,
But do you know what it did? Do you know what it did? What it did for me was, if you'd kept the name Ludichrist, I would have been disappointed.
Right, right,
But because it came out under a different name, I was kind of like, oh, I don't like the new band.
right, right,
Yeah. So these two
right, right,
records, they're not stained. Do you know what
right,
I
right,
mean?
right, right,
I don't look at them like, oh, just and then what happened?
right,
It's like
right.
they're complete, they still stand and shine and gleam on
Right.
their own.
It's their own
Um,
thing. Yeah, yeah. I think it's like Howie was the kind of smart guy, and Steve kind of usually gave good advice. Still goes on, like I think he has a public relations firm, and he like manages bands, and he's doing really well with stuff. And like that's the thing, like those guys, like we didn't really feel like it was like the record company versus us. At
yeah,
that point, at least with those two guys, we kind of thought like, well, these guys have been going to all the same shows. Like, they're just like, they're on this side of it, and we're on the writing and performing, recording side. So we're like,
yeah.
if you guys know some stuff, like tell us, and like we'll figure out how to make it work. It is
That
funny that,
sounds that sounds like similar to the relationship we had with our label. It was never adversarial.
yeah,
It was always like there were these people that we trusted. I mean, Christ, when we signed, I mean, Metallica had just released, well, had just left about
right,
2 months before we signed. It was like to say that, we were signed as the replacement. And yeah, right. I kid myself to this very day that was the case. Um, but it's like I was buying stuff on this label before I signed to it.
right,
You
right,
know,
right,
they were informing my musical tastes before they'd even heard our band. So these guys know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. So we genuinely listened to their advice nearly every single time. We said either
right.
no or fuck off or that's a stupid idea. But occasionally it would be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But one of the coolest things, and again, I think because I have this weird thing where it's like I don't slag off record labels per se.
Right.
It's like, oh, why this label owns our masters in perpetuity. Yeah, because you signed the deal, you fucking idiot. That's why. You
Right,
know,
right,
it's like we signed a deal. I mean, we signed a deal. I was 17 years old, but I had enough of a brain to get a music industry lawyer to look over the contract, who increased all of the budgets for the albums, increased all the advances, and inserted into each album a clause that we got the masters back after 10
right,
years. And the
right,
label were
right,
like, okay. And the label's attitude was, if we haven't recouped in 10 years, then we fucked up and it's on us.
right, right. Or we radically misjudged and this thing isn't worth anything, in which case, have at it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't got a bad word for our record label. In fact, I was the only artist that was at Martin Hooker's funeral a couple of years ago. Um, in fact, I say a couple of years ago, it was just before lockdown. And it was really weird because I was the only artist that he signed that was at the
Oh,
funeral,
how funny.
and and yet there was two eulogies read out, one from Dee Schneider and one from Lars Ulrich. I was like, I'm in pretty good company here. But
Yeah, it's funny, right?
they were great guys, and we trusted them. And by the sounds of it, you had a very similar relationship.
Yeah, I mean, like, we were just like some guys playing music, like trying to make stuff happen. It's not like it's like they thought they could do something with they kind of got it, and they
Yeah,
and like our job was to make it and go out there and do it, right? But it's like, but we weren't experts in like which distribution channel stuff was going to happen, or like even at that point, like we made like I made like t-shirts and artwork for stuff, but like we didn't do marketing, you know like
yeah,
we didn't know how to get it into new people's hands other than to go to Milwaukee and play at the local club and hope the college radio station picked up on it. So those guys were kind of into like the music, like how music could get to people. Yeah, we like disagreed about a bunch of stuff along the way, but don't really expect to agree with people on everything, you know?
yeah. And
It was
also, I
fun.
I don't know about you, but I felt like especially when you've just been a band and it's just you guys. That's it. You know, you're your band, you've no manager or anything like that.
Right.
You're just a band. And now all of a sudden, you feel like you've got a bunch of guys who've got your back.
Right. Right.
For me, that was like, yeah, right. Kind of like it validated
Right.
what we were doing, you
Right.
know?
Right. 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 I mean, I literally remember, like going and figuring out how to get stuff recorded and then going and making the cassette demos and then spending every afternoon like sending cassettes out and putting the $10 that came in an envelope like in a stack so I could keep, keeping a notebook of recording everything. When that could scale up and somebody could sell the music besides me, like I was like, this is amazing. Like
Yeah.
we could just spend more time like writing and touring and doing this stuff because me, my mother, or Tommy or Tommy's mother doesn't have to be standing there like stuffing envelopes to make stuff
Yeah.
happen. It's really
Yeah.
at that like labor level,
Yeah, yeah, and there's that thought that's constantly going through your mind when you're doing that process of just imagine
Yeah,
a time where being in a band is just about being in a band,
right,
where you're not like, oh, I've got to get those cassettes off to those guys, or I've got to get these cassettes off or I've got to try and drum up some fanzine interest, or
right, right, right.
all of that shit, and then
Calling
all.
clubs on the phone, literally like, hey, how do we get a gig there? It's like
Well,
that's
dude, we recorded the demo that got us signed. We then recorded the mini album. We then signed a management deal. We then played our first ever live show because there was that much of a scene where we were from. Um, but looking back on it now, I think that's how we ended up getting signed,
right,
because we'd spent 3 years in the village hall writing songs,
right,
right? Just and right, throw that one away, new one, throw that one away, new one, throw that one away, new one, throw that. And that was for about 2.5, 3 years.
right,
So by the time we put we put some money into a proper demo tape and put a color cover on it and stuff and sent it to all the labels, by that point,
pretty good. Yeah,
yeah, we've actually kind of matured a bit, instead of playing that time, using that time playing live, which, yeah, that would have got our live chops up
right,
to scratch, but ultimately it would have it would have had an impact on our
right,
songwriting capabilities. So we kind of did it the other way around. But I think that's how I ended up signing a deal when I'm 17 years old.
right, right.
It's just one of those things, and we actually we were offered 3 deals on the back of that. Music for Nations offered us a deal.
That's so great.
um we had a Power Station Records in the UK offered us a deal, and then about 2.5 months after that, Carl Ulterback from Noise rang us up and he offered us a deal. I was like, yeah, it's too late, mate.
Already got one. Already got. What else
Yeah,
you got?
yeah.
You got anything other than a record deal there? Because
Yeah.
we got one of those, but
It's okay. You've got Sabbath. You got the booby prize. Don't worry, mate.
yeah,
Andy,
it's
I
funny.
don't mean it.
Like for us, we were, like we always get grouped in as a kind of New York band, but the
Mm,
band was from like 45 minutes away, 50 minutes away on Long Island, which is like one of the suburbs. It's very super suburban. And so like the area where we were living and kind of playing, like there was nothing going on. Like there was almost there was no music scene. There was nothing.
yeah,
So you had to either get on a train or like have a friend who had a car and like we'd go into Manhattan and see stuff. So, we kind of wind up like playing a lot in like people's garages and basements and getting tight because that's all we had to do, you know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think
and then by
that's an interesting difference, because that's not something we had.
right,
But there's never been that culture of
right,
And I don't know why. I don't know why, but there's never been that culture in the UK of playing, of literally being a garage band, of playing garages, of playing parties, of playing kegs,
Right,
backdoor,
right.
you know, in back gardens and stuff like that. Whether possibly it's the weather. I mean, you know, maybe.
Could be. Yeah, it's
You
wet.
don't want to be playing out. You don't want to be playing your electrical music equipment outside if it's going to burst out raining any minute. Um, but yeah, there's never been that culture over here. So it's because I recognize a lot of what you're saying. We were, you know, we were about 30 miles from, well, about 20 miles from Leeds, which is where you could go and see a band. I mean, I used to go to the
Right.
Duchess of York in Leeds and see bands all the time. You know, everybody from Descendants, all Scream with Dave
Hmm.
Grohl in them back in '85 and all of that. And I saw everyone there, Alice Donuts, Spermbirds, you name it. And the but it seemed so it's like that was for real bands,
Right,
you know,
right.
and we were just, you know, for me it was kind of like one day, you know, I dream of playing this shithole. You know, and eventually we did many times, and it became our home, and until it got turned into a shopping center like every venue we ever fucking played. But I recognize that being on the edge of
Yeah,
something
of something
that
that's
is
happening.
something that's special, and you just can't quite reach it. You just don't have the tools to break into it.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
we wound up like we wound up kind of even becoming more popular in New York at like places like by CBGB's because we went up to Connecticut. We we would like we would just try and get shows anywhere, but it was kind of pretty hard to get like you could get a show, but it was hard to get a crowd. And we for some
Yeah,
reason we would do
there's a big
there's a big
there's no
difference.
show without a crowd.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise it's just you
Well,
in the room.
otherwise it's just as I call it in comedy, because I've been doing stand up for 20 years. Um, as we call it in comedy, otherwise it's just a paid rehearsal.
Right, right, right.
You know, that's it. It's like there's nobody there.
Right. There's nobody there. It's like we kind of came in the back door in a funny way where we went up to Connecticut and people were like, "Well, wow, look at this crazy shit that's happening in New York." And we're like, "Well, not New York, Long Island, but okay." And then we kind of, for whatever reason, people loved us up there and we became popular. And then we booked a show in New York. We got to had a show in at CBGB's. Maybe can't even remember what the lineup was. And then all of a sudden, like 150 kids or 200 kids came from Connecticut because they were like, these guys must be the biggest band in New York because they're so great. And then the then people in New York were like, who the fuck are these guys that like bring in like 200 people from just like coming
Right.
like from
Yeah.
cars to this stuff. And then things got a kind of a lot easier getting shows and stuff, but it's just totally, I think it's just totally random, right?
Yeah.
Like I have no idea why. Um,
But
I
the thing
mean,
is, as well, is that those are our kind of formative years as well. And I mean, we came back in 2015, and it's been an incredible journey since then. I
uh,
hate
uh,
using that phrase because it sounds like it's a fucking reality TV show, but it's been amazing because you get to hear the stories of how of what an impression you made because
right,
you know it was a special time. Before thrash metal came along, there was heavy metal, and that was it. Thrash
right,
metal was the first other genre of which we now have a family tree that has, you know, a million genres.
right, right,
And and it create and I'd imagine a bit like Ludichrist live. I I always refer to the fact that I don't think, you know, we didn't and we don't play shows. We host parties,
right,
and that leaves a real imprint on people because as far as we always played, we never gave a shit. We always played like the stage is an extension of the floor.
right,
It's
right,
like it's us up here, but it could have been you. And if it was you, this is what you'd be doing, you know?
right, right,
So that really left an indelible mark on a lot of people, especially at at a time where, you know, you're maturing, your musical taste is being imprinted on your brain for the rest of your life.
Right.
And so coming back to it after many, many years, it's incredible to hear the stories that people have that you never heard. You know, the things that happened in the audience, the
Right.
injuries. Obviously, it starts with the injuries, but not just the injuries. I mean, we did when we first came back. I was trying to get through the crowd, and I was kept getting stopped, and you know, for selfies and stuff because autographs aren't a thing anymore. And I'm walking, and this guy stopped me, and I was trying to get to friends at the back, and I said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but I can't stop." And he just said, "I just wanted to let you know why you were responsible for 3 marriages and 6 children." So
Say,
I've
okay,
got,
I've stopped. Yeah.
I have got
Tell
time
me.
for you. And it was basically 3 kids who went to an acid rain show at a particular venue, and there were 3 girls, 3 guys. They all ended up getting together, and then they went off home, and then they spent about a year talking about what a great night it was. And then the next time we came around and played, they all met again. They said that this time they didn't make the mistake of not swapping phone numbers. They all end up getting married, and they all end up having 2 children. So
That's amazing.
yeah, yeah, and so it's worth coming back just for those stories. Has there ever been a, you know, a time where you guys have looked at, you know, coming back, or is that something that is just a no-go?
I don't, you know, the other guys have done a couple reunion things. In 2000, maybe 2008, they did the first, like a first Ludichrist reunion, but it lined up really weirdly with like what was going on in my life. I had just started my own business, and my
Right,
dad was having health problems, and I was like, the other guys actually live out on Long Island. I live in Manhattan, so it's like, and I don't have a car you know, and I haven't had a car
right,
in years. So it's
yeah,
like to go out onto Long Island is going to be like a 2 hour process each way. And I was like, oh, okay, no, I think like I would. And they've done a couple over the years, but I haven't gotten involved with any of them. Um, which is kind of funny because you know the version that does, so they've been, the first one was a Scatterbrain slash Ludichrist reunion, and then the other ones have been Ludichrist shows, but the lineup's pretty much like, you know, the Scatterbrain. Well, it's like Tommy, Paul, and Guy. And I
right.
can't remember if Mike Boyko, who is the Scatterbrain drummer, did the one in 2008, but it's been Dave Miranda, who is the drummer on Power Trip, has been doing it. So it's sort of like it's an interesting cross between the two things. It just hasn't lined up with, like, what they've been doing is like a one-off show,
Right.
um, you know, like one a year or one every 2 years. I'm like, that's a lot of like, I'm like, I don't know if everybody wanted to get together and drink some beers and hang out, and then, you know, it's like, it seems a little like the structure of it isn't the right one for me at the moment.
Well, you see, the funny thing is, I thought you were going to go somewhere where, yeah, my thoughts on that. To this day, people say like, "Oh, you know, will you come and play here?" And it's like for X amount and blah blah. And I always say the same thing. We have to put the same amount of resources into
Right,
doing to prepare for one show as to
right,
prepare for 10.
right, right.
So unless there's 9 shows around it,
Yeah, it's like,
no.
can you talk to some other people and like help put together 10 shows? And then it's like,
Yeah,
then it becomes interesting. It becomes like a fun thing we can do together. But it's
yeah.
like, I never judge these things whether they're going to make money. I always assume they're not going to make money. Um,
Oh, obviously.
which I think is realistic. So if
Yeah,
like there's a reason to do it to hang out or like have fun or any of those things, like, or like
yeah,
like you said, like connect with people that you know, that
yeah.
were touched in some way, like that to me seems pretty fun. Um, but yeah, like 12 weeks of rehearsals for one show, it seems like uh, something's like the balance isn't kind of right, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
also
also,
always
sorry, go on.
no, I always thought like you're saying, I always thought like the same way. It's like doing music is like an extension of just your life, you know. It's like you do it because you're psyched and you do it with other people and like the audience is the same as the other band members. It's just like it's just one big kind of thing. So like figuring out a way where, you know, like if collectively we ever figure out a way to kind of make a scenario like that happen and it seems fun, then I'm on board. But if it's like, you know, they're sort of doesn't feel connected to the like I have less interest in like yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I sort of think somehow it's like maybe not the same thing in the
Yeah.
like we're not exactly talking about the same thing. And I don't have any negative feelings towards anybody, but it's like I have a pretty good idea for me what I love about music and what I love about like playing together with people. And it's like if it lines up with that, I'm 100% in, you know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, are you still involved? Are you still involved with music in any way?
Yeah, I started again like somewhere before the pandemic. I mean, well, I mean, my life path's been kind of interesting. Like after Ludichrist and Scatterbrain, I moved to Nashville and I played with a bunch of guys down there for about 10 years.
Wow.
So it's actually
Uh,
longer than Ludicrous and Scatterbrain together.
I'm familiar with that feeling. I've been in stand up for 20 years and nobody wants to fucking hear about it. No one gives a shit. I'm that guy from Acid Rain and I always will be, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, and that's fine, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You take what
It's
you can
like,
get.
yeah, whatever people like good for them that they like it.
Yeah,
So I played in Nashville for years, and then and the band was called Stone Deep. It was kind of like a combination of these guys who had a band called The Hardcore that were like produced by Jam Master Jay. They were like a rap rock act. Like think of Aerosmith, Run DMC, Walk This Way, or Anthrax, Public Enemy. Basically,
yeah.
that was their style. And those were the guys that I connected with and played with for years. But while I was down there, I started working in like advertising and publishing to like make a living. And I wound up going into design, which led me back to New York. So um, I've been mostly like my head stuck in like design business things
Yeah.
for years. And then at some point I was like, you know what? Mm, I'm pretty good at this design thing now. You know, for a long time I was like trying to play catch up and just
Yeah.
be kind of like, and then I was like, I know what I'm doing now. It's like maybe I can put a little time like towards music, but I always was a little hesitant towards like re-engaging music because I kind of love it. And if I dip my toe in, like I know myself at least that well, it's like I just kind of start doing the things I really like.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll start playing a little, I'll dig out my guitars and I started playing again with the guys in Nashville. We started doing some shows down there. And I started writing some music and just like maybe paying a little more attention to stuff. So yeah, I'm back at least partially kind of doing music stuff, which is
That's cool.
it's fantastic actually. It's like a whole nother part of my brain that's been I mean, I'm like the design stuff's like super creative and you work closely with people and it's like you
Yeah.
argue and it's like it's desperate because there's never enough money and there's never enough time. It's like super fun in a lot of ways, like music. But there's something about like connecting with people that
Yeah.
design doesn't own it does like 1/100th of what happens in music.
There's an exact parallel here which I can completely identify with because your design is my stand-up comedy, which is it's great, it's wonderful, I enjoy it, it's on stage, I get a buzz and all the rest of it. And if someone says to me, tomorrow, is it an Acid Rain show or a comedy show? Pick one. Acid Rain, not a competition. And yet I've been doing the comedy way longer, and all of that. And you're right, it ticks all of the
Right,
boxes.
right.
It ticks all of the boxes, but it doesn't tick the one
Yeah,
and only box that music ticks.
that's
And
right.
that's
That's right.
and it's that connection. And people say like, oh, but making people laugh, it's such a wonderful thing. It's the greatest thing you can do. It's like, no, it isn't.
It
Right?
isn't. Yeah.
It's like you can make anyone can make people laugh. You've just got to be shit for a few years, push on through. You end up being good. Every
Right.
single human being can be a decent stand-up comedian. The only thing that's stopping you is is not having the desire to push through being
Right.
shit for years. You know,
Right. That's right.
um, and put it this way, it takes a lot of effort to be doing this for 20 years and still be shit. um, um, so so you, it sounds a bit blasé, but do you know what? Everybody has made somebody laugh in their lifetime.
Uh, uh,
Everyone has told a story that's made people laugh. Everyone's told a joke that's made people laugh. Who's written a song that touches people's very souls and takes them back to a time when they were younger, that can make them cry, that can remind them of a friendship or a person they've lost? It's you can reach into somebody's chest and fuck with their emotions.
right. Right.
That's more powerful than
Yeah.
making somebody laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple as that.
It's just the most powerful thing. It's just the most like exciting. It's the moment where you feel like you can be alive in the world the most, where you really feel like together with a group of people the most, where people get excited together, almost like maybe if you played sport, like some kind of sports at a certain level on a team, like maybe it would, I don't, so I don't know. Maybe there would be some of that feeling there, but yeah, it's huge. I mean, it never goes away from like once you feel it and do it and it's in your brain, it's sort of like it's sort of not going away, is it?
I completely agree. It's also why, strangely, I felt like I had this connection with you, despite the fact that we've never fucking met until today, until now. But also how
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah.
I haven't seen John Connolly for 20. Oh no, actually I saw him in I was 19. No, I saw him when they played Bloodstock, and it was about probably about 10 years ago now.
Okay.
But I hadn't seen John for about 25 years. And I was backstage and they'd already played, and he was sat on a bench having a beer with somebody, and I just went and sat on the bench next to him and I had a beer in my hand, and he looked at me and I looked at him and I went, "Hey John." And he just went, "Hey dude, how's it going?" I was like,
Exactly.
"Pretty good."
No,
And it was like I'd gone to the bar and got a drink and come back,
right, right,
as opposed to 25 fucking years. You know,
right.
it's that like somebody's just left the room and come back in again, where there's a just like, yep, there it is.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly. I just watched John on, he did this podcast called New York Hardcore Chronicles. And I watched it like maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. They got John to come on and answer some questions about nuclear assault. And I also haven't seen him. Maybe even, I think much even longer. I don't even I hesitate to even think what year. And it was like watching John on the doing the interview. It's like, yeah, I felt like I was kind of
Yeah,
the conversation continues, right? It's like
yeah,
there's a certain kind of mindset about stuff where that's greatly appreciated.
yes, yeah. And also sadly, one member of Acid Rain, or one of the members of Acid Rain over the years, is no longer with us, and he passed
Oh,
away. He was also somebody that I went to school with. It was our original bass player called Ian. And I just can't describe how hard that hit me. I
oh,
hadn't seen him for 7 or 8 years. And you know, he was my school friend, but also there is this thing about when you've played music with somebody,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I just can't even begin to describe it.
Yeah, it's just some kind of deeper bond. Like, I mean, we had, not to go on about kind of Nuclear Assault because there were other bands we kind of spent a lot of time with, but yeah, we must have played dozens and dozens of shows together, watched their show every night, talked guitars with John. He helped me fix stuff. If I could fix, John was handier than I was, so he probably helped me fix stuff more than I helped him do anything. I drove Nuclear Assault to their ride broke down. I drove them like Quebec once in my van. John was like our did merchandise for us, like, and
Yeah.
it's like it's just like was part of like this, you just have a group of people that are all like playing music, trying to make it. There's no like pretense. You're just trying to like pump stuff up the hill and make it kind of work. And yeah, I feel like a just kind of deep connection to all those people who are like trying to make the thing they were passionate about happen, but didn't
Yeah.
have like crazy egos or weren't struggling with any of those. We all
Yeah.
struggle with other stuff,
But I think we
they're
all
just good people.
we all that's that connection, and that's kind of like I think it's what makes those people who may have only been in our lives for what we now know to be a short time,
Right.
but they're still kind of like I always think when I bump into somebody that I toured with, that I've played with, or I've had some kind of connection musically with, it's like meeting extended family. It's like going to a wedding, or more
Right.
likely a funeral these days, um where you see somebody you haven't seen since the last wedding or funeral or
Right.
gig,
Right.
you know and there's just that sense of and again, it's cheesy and corny, but there is that sense of connection
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is very, very difficult to describe. And for anybody listening as well, or watching, I'm well aware how pretentious this can possibly sound.
Right. Anytime you wax poetic about anything, right? People are like, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, get your head out of your ass. But it's true. That's what I'm.
it's
That's
true.
the summation of that is it's true, and it's impossible to describe, and that's how you end up sounding pretentious and using corny words like connection, because that's the best you can do.
Right. It's
There
totally the
really
best.
is. Yeah. But also it's kind of like, certainly when I look back on those early days, they are some of the happiest times of my life, because I was still young enough to not have any major commitments,
Right. Right.
or thoughts of mortality, or an aching back, or feeling tired, lame old man shit like that.
Right. Right.
You just absolutely went hell for leather, got no sleep, got up and did it again. And
Right. Right.
you kept doing that
You kept doing it.
until, yeah, you just kept doing that until maybe you slept for like 2 days straight or something. And then you went back to it. And yeah, it's a beautiful time as well. That kind of makes it all the more, sort of adds the mystique for me anyway.
I ran across somebody like who, like I had gone to school with, and they were like, wow, man, like it's so amazing, like you did this music thing or this design thing and this other stuff. And I was like, oh, thanks, like, and they're like, how did you do it? Like what enabled you to do it? And I was like, it was no special thing. It was just like I was not interested in doing it's like, if anything, it was like selfishness, it's like that's the thing I love and I just want to do it. So like I'm not gonna do these other things. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
save money. I'm not gonna get an apartment. I'm gonna live in a basement, like I'm gonna like because I want it, because all those things are secondary to the thing that I want to do. So like uh how did I do it? I don't know. You just like there's no secret. You just, if you're
Yeah.
excited about something, you just do it and you just keep doing it, and then it turns into stuff or it doesn't,
That
and
that's
like
a
that's kind
really
of
that's a really good way that you've put it there as well, because I think sometimes and I understand it, and I'm not in any way decrying it, but sometimes people refer to making sacrifices.
Right,
And I
right.
always think sometimes that is a little disingenuous.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you didn't make sacrifices. You were doing this no matter what.
Yeah, no
It
shit.
wasn't a sacrifice. You just described it as that selfishness. It's that and to
Yeah,
reference sports, it's that obsession. It's that
right.
that well, if you're going to do this to a level that is professional,
Then just do
then
it.
you will have to just do it. But they won't be sacrifices, but there
Right,
will be shit that everyone else is doing that
right,
you're not.
right. Right, exactly. You don't have money to go on a cool vacation with your friends. You don't have you don't have time to do that because you have to go rehearse or you have to go do these other things. So it's like, how much do you, if you really are a weird enough person to be obsessed by the things you love, then there's no sacrifice, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like, because the top priority is what you're interested in. If you're just given, like, if all your responsibilities are released, you owe nothing to anybody. You'd spend 120 hours a week, like just doing the thing you're super psyched about. It's like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
somehow, like if you do it long enough, people are like, wow. Instead of sort of wanting to condemn you or say, do you need an intervention in your life? You seem quite obsessed. Then they say, oh, you've done it for a while. Like, how did you do it? Like, just such, I don't know. Like, we're all uneven in different ways, and like you just try and find your thing and kind of do it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's funny. There's a line in not the in Dust Till Dawn that Harvey Keitel uses, where he's an ex-priest, and he says every priest, I don't matter whether you're Hindu, Buddhist, Catholic, Protestant, whatever, every priest at some point in their lives will look in the mirror and say, "Am I a fool? Am I?" And I was thinking, just change it to musician, mate.
Oh my God. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, if you don't, you're sort of sleeping, right? Like you look around and you say, "Oh wow, like these my friends are married, they have three kids, they like have a home, like oh, or like," and you're like, "What have I got? I got nothing, right?" Um,
Yeah, but
but it's
I
not true. You don't have
recognize.
anything. You have a lot. You actually had it in terms of experience. And what's really interesting is like like they were talking. I think they were talking about like maybe it was even Gen Z or millennials. They said, yeah, people are putting a lot less value in accumulating objects or saving money and more value in experiences. And when I was listening to this radio program, I was like, yeah, that's what being a musician is. It's like all your effort goes into like this shared kind of thing, like playing music, exchanging, playing it for other people, hearing, spending time with people, hearing them, hearing other things. At the end, you have no objects, you have no money, but you had like
Yeah,
this incredible, rich experience that you couldn't have any other way. But
yeah,
then, people always abstract these things that generations are doing. They're like, oh, the young kids, they're not buying real estate like they should. They and sometimes it's funny because you hear it and you say, well, that's not new, you know.
yeah,
None
yeah.
of these things are
I agree. I agree. I mean, our career was really sort of 4 years back in the day where it was like full on. And uh, I look back now and friends went to university and stuff like that. And I always refer to it now as like all my friends went to university, like 3 years at university or 4 or 5 years at university. I said, and I went to University of Heavy Metal and came out with a degree in sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
exactly
They paid to go to university. I got paid to go around the world and have nothing but fun.
right,
So it's not a competition, but if it was,
right,
I'd win.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
But if it was, I'd sign up again and I'd win
yeah,
again.
Yeah, and how many of those guys as well say the university days were the happiest of their lives? Are like, dude, put that university in a fucking tour bus. Yeah. And just imagine that shit. Um, but also I recognize what you were saying earlier as well about, what friends kind of, getting married, kids, all the rest of it, houses, and oh, when are you getting married, Howard? And when are you going to have kids? And there's that's where that sort of looking in the mirror, am I a fool, comes
Right,
from.
right,
But then when you push through those years, as I have, um, uh, you push through those years and things start coming full circle when these same friends who are saying, when you get married, when you get married, they start saying, wow, it's like that stuff with the band and everything, and the comedy and all the rest of it. It's like that's pretty incredible. There's like that's a real sort of journey. I can't imagine what that's like.
right, right, right,
I wish I had two lives so I could do something like that next time, instead of the, like, don't get me wrong, I love my wife, I love my kids,
right,
but the boring wife and kids thing,
right.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah, it's funny. And I mean, I guess that's what's so nice about having friends or colleagues or knowing people. It's like you sort of get to like have a view into other people's lives and at least be part of them. Like even if you didn't do these things, you can go over to dinner with your friend or one of my friends that has like a bunch of kids and like did it and he's like still a super smart, funny guy and kind of knows all this stuff and we connect on and it's like he did over there this, and I get a glimpse into his stuff, and he gets a glimpse into mine, and we sort of feel like, yeah, okay, I feel good about stuff, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like the music thing's just super. I mean, it's super. I really think like it's an amazing the post-COVID moment, if we are post-COVID, hopefully. Um, it's never really going to go away, but it's lightened. Like the enthusiasm that was reborn for live music, it's just really staggering. Like
Yeah, not
I
so much,
really
not so much enthusiasm for the reborn ticket pricing levels.
I look at these old flyers people have sent me. They're like, they're like $5 shows, $3
Yeah.
shows or whatever. I mean, I don't think
Well,
I five, yeah, five
that
pounds.
right there,
Yeah.
that's Nuclear Assault, Acid Rain, and Reanimator ended up on that show, and that's £5.
Fantastic. As
Yeah.
it should be. It should just be like, I mean, the bars made their money on booze. And yeah, I mean, touring bands probably could have used a little more money to stay alive. Um, but it's just like part of everyday life. And I mean, I see that in New York. Like I have friends or kind of younger folks I know, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to see this on Tuesday. I'm going to see that on Friday, this on Monday. It's not just like Friday, Saturday, but they're like, it's like live music's getting reintegrated into people's lives. Like, can hardly believe it. It's fantastic.
There's definitely well, not just live music, but I mean music in general. Somebody was saying to me the other day that it's like, oh, I'm I just haven't heard anything recently that I like. And it's like, well, you're lucky enough to be alive at a time where there is now more music and more access to that music than at any other point in human
Right,
history. So it's not the music, it's you. And
right, right,
you need to look harder because
right,
it's
right.
out there. It is out
You
there. You just haven't found it yet. You're just looking in the wrong places.
you
Try
have to
harder.
look in a different way. It used to be that there wasn't that much, and you had to dig in and kind of like get to it. Now there's just so much. It's just like the tools of making music are like they're really good. So like,
But ironically, we used, our generation would tend to say, like, we used to have to like wade through record shops in all sorts of different towns and cities to complete a collection of a band, and you'd be trying to track something down, and oh, the joy, the fun, the discovery, oh, all that's gone now. And it's like, no, it hasn't. It just means you have to wade through, instead of stores, you have to wade through more and more of the internet to
right,
actually find the band. It's like, oh yeah, when you discover a band, yes, there's their entire discography. Yes, but it takes forever to find the fucking band.
right,
That's what's changed, you
right.
know?
Or like it's, you know, also like well, there were fewer things, and so there were less genres, but maybe more diversity inside the genre. Like in other words, like you probably could have gone see a thrash show, and there would have been things that would have been considered death metal,
Yes.
crossover, like black metal, straight metal, kind of, and those all would have been considered as one smaller thing. Now it's kind of exploded into like all these genres, and there's sort of more, even more difference within the genres. Like it's so interesting. Like I post stuff from the Stone Deep guys like online, and it's like we're not like that weird of a band. It's like heavy stuff meets kind of rap stuff. But it's like, oh, okay, I can't post in this forum because that's only for um, you know, that's for new
Yeah.
metal. That's for like rap infused new metal, and we don't fit into that category. So like these categories, we like, holy shit, I am really too old to kind of like go through all this stuff. It's like
Yeah.
the desire to categorize, whether it's coming from algorithms or whatever, is really a kind of, it's really a totally different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a lot easier posting in a forum than it is handing out flyers. You know? Yeah. I mean, take that every day
Yeah.
of the week.
Oh my God. I can't tell you how many times it's also really funny when people start collecting flyers, and like you just watch online and be like, I designed that one. I was at that show. I handed those out for my friend. It's just like I remember like drawing the flyers by hand and then getting my mom to like go into her office after hours to use the copy machine because I had no money to, and making them half size so I could cut them in half and carry them in a bag to go to the show, and like a stapler trying to like staple onto like the light poles and stuff. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, we spent a lot of time stapling stuff up.
Well,
Amazing.
every now and again, I get somebody message Acid Rain through social media, and it will be, "Hey guys, love your band. I collect guitar picks. Would it be possible if you could send me a guitar pick? I'll pay for postage, blah blah." And it's like, dude, that's not how it works. I'm sorry, but you're going to get this grumpy old school reply of, if you want an Acid Rain guitar pick, make sure you're near the fucking front of an Acid Rain show, and then you'll get one.
Right.
Just because the internet, and hey, look, fine, well done for asking, but the answer
Right.
is get to a show, get down the front. That's where you get a
That's
pick.
where you get stuff. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
or you bump into guitarists before or after show, whatever. You ask if he's got a spare pick. If he's got one, he'll let you have it.
Yeah.
But that's how you get them. That's that's. I'm sorry. There's some things that I'm just a stickler on, and that is one of them. I'm not that I'm a guitarist, but it's kind of like, yeah, that's how it works. That's not changing.
Right, right. Everything just gets flattened onto internet exchanges where like, yeah, like the pic that you save is a sign, is like a remembrance that you were there and you had.
Yeah, well, I've now taken to my stock reply is, if they ask for a pic, I send them a pic of a pic. So I send them a pic of an Acid Rain pic and go, there you go, add that to your collection.
All good.
Yeah,
Here it
just
is.
print it off, laminate it, boom. You've got yourself a
It's so good.
genuine pic.
So
Uh,
you guys doing any, do you have anything, is the group actively playing again, and you have
we've been
gigs
back.
coming?
We've been back since 2015. We put our first album out in 24 years in 2019.
Wow,
Um,
congrats.
Thank you very much. It was it was quite the achievement. Currently working on the follow-up. Had a lineup change in that time, just one, which is a lot less than
Yeah.
first time around. And I mean, it's a different lineup every album, whereas this one
Right,
is
right.
like we just one member change. And it was great because I got to tick so many boxes with the comeback album. I made sure that there was like Acid Rain fans boxes were ticked. There's a long song about a horror movie, Evil Dead. There's a punky cover version, and it's a Suzanne Vega tune. And I was lucky enough to get a reply from Susan saying, oh my God, I can't believe what you've done. This is incredible. Please send it
That's
out to so
awesome.
many. Yeah, she ended up guesting on the song. I mean, I say guesting. She literally says like there's a ringing in my ear at the beginning of the tune, and that's it. But she also
That's pretty
guests.
cool though. Yeah.
Oh man, she's one of my favorite all-time artists. So it was just an absolute buzz to have her on. And also we did a video for it, and we released it as a single, but we also did a lockdown video. And she filmed a bit of video in her apartment in New York, sent it to us, and in the video I open my closet, and Suzanne Vega's in there. Um, so
That's awesome.
oh man, it was so much fun. I got to do she came on the show, and so that was so many boxes ticked. And the guy who does the artwork is the guy, he's called Mark Wilkinson. He did the first four Marillion albums, which
Oh
were
wow.
I was a huge Marillion fan, big fan of Fish, and so those artworks that he did were posters on my wall, and those posters would have been in front of me and around me when I was writing lyrics for Acid Rain the first time round. And I met Mark, the artist, Mark Wilkinson, and I was like, oh, it's like great to meet you, big Marillion fan, blah blah blah. Um, and I met him backstage. I was introduced to him by a mutual friend, and I said, oh, big fan, and big fan, and we'd already recorded the album, and he kind of cut me off almost immediately. He said, "Oh well, nowadays I'm working with Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. I'm doing Fish's last album, and then I'm kind of stepping away a bit at the
Wow.
moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, fine, fine. So we just had a bit of a chat. We had a bit of a chat, and I thought, like in my brain, I'm not having this. I'm not having this.
He's
So
got
I'm
to do
trying to,
it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm concocting this, like, what's this Hail Mary question. And I just think, right, I've got to try and he said, because if you want sort of, skulls and swords, I'm not really a guy anyway. And I said, there's my in. I was like, right, look, that's not us. That's not us at all. And our mutual friend is a guy who used to be in Venom and happens to be his next door neighbor. So, and he's like, no, 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 they're like, no, no, that's not Acid Rain at all. I said, look, let me give you an idea of how different we are. Okay. On the album, it is a cover version of a song by Suzanne Vega. And he went, oh, which song? And I said, Blood Makes Noise, which in the UK is kind of unknown, really. In the UK, she's still known for kind of Marlena on the Wall, Luca, Tom's Diner. That's it.
Right, right.
And he goes, oh, good tune. I was like, right. He
You're
he
like,
knows his
okay.
yeah, he knows his Vega. So and I said, and I said, all right, I'll send you I'll send you our version of it. And he said, yeah, yeah, no, do that, do that. So I waited a few days after the festival, don't want to look too keen, and I sent him an email. It's nice to meet you, Mark, blah, blah, blah. Here's that thing. About 40 minutes later, I get an email back, and he says, okay, just listen to this. Reminds me of when I used to be a punk at university back in Leeds, which is where I'm from,
Over
not
there.
far away. I now live in London. And he said, this is absolutely great. I love it. I'll do the artwork for the album, no problem. So it's like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Fish, Acid Rain.
Because you connected, it's like you like talk to him and try to understand like who was right. It's like all the stuff you do with music and all the stuff you did, the work you've done, like kind of connecting with people through the stand-up stuff. it's like real world applications, right? Where it's
Yeah,
like
I
just
guess
like
so. Yeah.
connecting.
But
Um,
also, some of it was learned. I've just remembered this because you mentioned this earlier. I spent a few years working in advertising and
mhm.
publishing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we've got something in common there as well.
Yeah.
Um,
You learn a
uh,
lot along the way, like in different.
oh,
I always think of like the different jobs and different things I've done. Like I've done a lot of weird stuff because being a musician, I didn't really make much money. So it was like, you do all these kind of truck driver, house painter, office temp, um, advertising, worked
yeah,
at a carnival, kind
yeah,
of
because
worked
because
at restaurants.
there's no there's no crossover skills. You know what I mean? There's no it's like, well, can you do this? Can you? It's like, look, I don't know what my skills. I mean, I'm pretty good at getting a circle pit started. Is that any use to you?
Yeah, right. Got some moves, good like
Yeah.
can announce bands, things related to, I can fix instruments, I can carry things. I'm very good at carrying things up inclines.
Yeah.
Be like, no,
Yeah.
nobody needs any of that.
Yeah. There's not a lot of transferable skills. But
People
yeah, you're
always
right.
said
It is that kind of like, you know, well, basically need work, we'll do it kind of attitude.
when I was living in Nashville, I was living in Nashville playing with the guys down there, and I was like, I gotta start making money. Like I was like, I didn't have much money, but I was like running on empty. And I was talking to a friend, and they were like, "Well, why don't you just pick up some guitar gigs around town?" And I was like, "Come on, this is like me trying to sell snow in Alaska." It's like every
Yeah.
single person in Nashville is actually a pretty accomplished guitar player. I remember like I was getting my car fixed, and like I had a guitar in the trunk, and the auto mechanic, before he fixed the car, he was like, "Hey, you want to take this? Don't leave this here. Take this with you. Because it's a garage. Like you don't want to leave stuff in the trunk." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "What kind of guitar you got?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just the old whatever." And he was like, "Can I check it out?" And I was like, "Sure." Took it out, played like far better than I have ever played. And he was like, "Cool. I have your breaks done in about 3 hours." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." Like, there's no way I was getting work in Nashville as like a pickup musician. It's like,
And yeah, the funny thing is, it's like it's the same in London. It's kind of like, do you know why there are no jobs for guitarists advertised? Because everybody fucking knows one.
yeah,
That's why.
nobody needs to nobody
Yeah.
needs to use an ad to get a guitar player. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the least wanted job, unwanted. Uh,
Brilliant. Oh, look, this is Glenn, this has been amazing. It really has. I mean, that's an hour and a half that has just kind of flown by.
oh my God, it's
Um,
total pleasure. No,
Oh,
total
mate,
pleasure connected.
honestly, we seriously, if you ever want to dip your toe into the craziest side of music again, COA has got to be a thing. Okay, you can transfer those digital files over here, and I can lay some vocals down, and
All right,
we can hands across the ocean. We
I'm gonna
can
take
get
you up on that.
we,
I'm gonna
we can
take you
get
up on that.
something crazy going. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'd love that. Let's do
Cool,
it.
man. Do it. Look, I don't say these things lightly. And yeah, I know that you're a guy who, when he says he's going to do something, he gets something done. Um, so look, this has been amazing. This has been everything I thought it would be, really. Like two guys, like two old friends who've never met before.
Fantastic. This is like like you're like 7 or 8 o'clock over there. What time
No,
are you?
6:30.
F6. Okay. Yeah, I'm just getting at like 1:30, so starting off my afternoon. This is like the best introduction to the weekend I've had in a long time.
Oh,
Really,
that's great
really
to hear,
enjoyed
man.
it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm going to have a smile on my face for the rest of my day. I really am. So thank you again for your time, Glenn. And you know, let's do this again. We're friends on Facebook now, so we're only a message away. So you know,
It's awesome.
let's stay in touch.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you
Morrison.
too. Take care. See ya.